Welcome everyone to another edition of More Bad News, brought to you as always by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camel's Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days and see for yourself what a difference Camels can make in your life. Well, my friends, it's been another week of very bad news. Last week we celebrated Passover, Easter, and Ramadan, and families everywhere gathered maskless in homes and houses of worship to celebrate. And in the meantime, the health officials report that COVID remains one of the leading causes of death, mostly among the elderly and immunocompromised. So no worries, as long as you're, it's only the elderly and the immunocompromised. Um, and of course, fighting broke out again in Sudan, adding to decades of suffering in that region, including one of the nastiest genocides of modern time, the first one actually in the 21st century that took place under Omar al-Bashir in Darfur between 2002 and 2020. In 2009, the International Criminal Court indicted Bashir for war crimes, and for a decade he flaunted the indictments, receiving red carpet treatments wherever he went. Well, Bashir was overthrown in 2019, and he's now in prison awaiting trial for corruption. And now fighting has erupted between the groups that originally ousted him. So in Bashir, you have a criminal who rampaged on for decades, only to end up in prison. In the meantime, the genocide drove nearly 500,000 refugees into camps in Chad, where they are to this day, supported by the United Nations. If you want to get a good inside view of these refugee camps, there's a very excellent depiction of it in the documentary Watchers of the Sky, which is a documentary about the life of Raphael Lemkin, the man who coined the term genocide. I highly recommend it. Um, and for the sad news, I learned from Science Magazine that one of my oldest and dearest friends, Garland Allen Gar, as he was universally called, died February 10th. And I would like to dedicate the rest of this show to him. I've never met another Garland. In 2020, Garland was the 12,404th most popular name for a boy born in the US. But in 1936, when Gar was born, it was the 630th most popular name for a boy. In the Bible, Garland refers to a wreath worn around the head, and garland symbolized the benefits of wisdom. According to his obituary, he passed away peacefully in Palm Springs, California on February 10th, 2023. He was 86 years old. I'm going to read a few tidbits from the official bio and then add a few personal comments. Gar was born on February 13th, 1936 in Louisville, Kentucky. He got his PhD in the history of science from Harvard University in 1966 and spent the next 50 years at Washington University, where I met him in 1974. Quote, Dr. Allen was widely known for his work in the history of genetics and was an international leader in the history of eugenics. His primary interest was in the history and philosophy of biology, particularly genetics, embryology, and evolution, and their interrelationships. Through his scholarship, he broadened the study of biology to include its philosophical and ideological dimensions, and particularly to illuminate the historical and political social context within which science is practiced. From early on, Gar's life and work was driven by a deep passion for politics and political philosophy. In the 1960s and 70s, he was active in the civil rights movement and participated in multiple marches, including the 1965 Selma to Montgomery March with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In 1979, he spent 5 months in Cuba as a member of the Venceremos Brigade, where he took part in harvesting sugarcane. This experience had a huge impact on him. He became deeply interested in Marxist philosophy, and from then on, he had an interest in dialectical materialism and economic determinism, influenced his responses and interpretations of science and the processes of its social context. And in the 1980s, Gar became active in the International Committee Against Racism, INCAR. Actually, that's not right. It was much earlier. It was when I knew him. A subgroup organization of the political they wrote Political Labor Party. They didn't have the name right. It's Progressive Labor Party, where he developed a strong commitment to social justice and social and racial justice. I can't help commenting here that In 1967, I met this beautiful woman carrying a Progressive Labor Party sign at an anti-war demonstration, and I asked her to explain to me what PLP stood for. And she said, "Oh, I'm just holding the sign for a friend who needs to take a break. I don't know anything about the organization." I married her 6 months later. I should also say that I always thought of PLP as composed of doctrinaire extremists who were, especially in the years that Gar was active, completely homophobic. They would not have Gar as a member of PL, despite the fact that he worked with INCAR. Um, Gar authored multiple books. I'll just show you a couple. We'll get back to that other stuff. I have an agenda here. So this is his main kind of like, it's a wonderful textbook. And here's his PhD from Harvard University. He also had a biology textbook that he wrote, and loads and loads of other stuff. Back to the obit. Above all else, Gar was a genuine, generous, inspired, and inspiring person who had many friends and created community everywhere he went. He had an infectious, childlike curiosity and a wonderful sense of humor. He never walked past someone without saying hello. He made every person feel welcome and feel real interest. He loved to have a glass of wine or bourbon and laugh. He always had time to listen to someone in need or to write someone a note. He consistently kept in touch with friends through letters, emails, visits, phone calls, etc. He was an attentive, encouraging father and a devoted, loving partner. He inspired us all with his brilliance, humility, and deep love of life. Gar and I used to greet each other every morning in front of the Macmillan Cafe at Washington University, where we'd start our morning off with coffee and cake. We always greeted each other with this warm hug. Gar, the obit says, is survived by his husband, Larry Bennett, and two daughters, Karen Allen and Tanya Allen, as well as four grandchildren. So I first met Gar Allen at Washington University in 1974 after I published an article in the campus newspaper. I had just gotten there, and I wrote in the campus newspaper, Student Life, where I came out as a gay man, and the article was entitled The Gay Experience. I wrote, to clarify, just to clarify before I start this, in the early 70s, I identified as gay and was very active in the gay rights movement at Washington Washington University. So here's how I started the article. Coming from New York to St. Louis this fall, I was perhaps more apprehensive than the average student setting up residence in a new city. I had come out only a few months before and had gone through my first love affair with a man. So I had gone through this transformative experience. So this is where I was when I came to Washington University. At Washington University, I found nothing. There was no place for gay people to meet, no organization or community to answer our needs. To all appearances, there's not a single gay person on campus. The reality is that our lifestyle is illegal and unacceptable to a significant and sometimes powerful and vehemently antagonistic segment of the population. I do not know how my coming out will affect my career, but it is only by testing the reality that we can know how justifiable our fears are and deal with our oppression. It would become apparent that my coming out article ended my career in the history department. But what they really objected to was not so much my sexuality as my Marxist politics. And of course, to say at Washington University I found nothing is not entirely true, because I found Gar. I had just completed my dissertation on John R. Commons and was fascinated by his eugenic ideas. And Gar was just coming around. He'd been working on genetics and got interested in eugenics. And we began to talk together about a project which we applied for a grant to the National Science Foundation. And I would essentially be writing my PhD with an NSF grant. And instead, the history department gave me the boot, and which was devastating. But right after they threw me out of the program, the NSF grant came through. So the next semester, I was back on campus now as a research associate in the biology department. And, talk about the social context of science. The history department would not tolerate Marxists, and Gar's history of science classes were never cross-listed with the history department, and they never offered him a joint position, despite the fact that he was a historian of science teaching in the biology department. His degree was from Harvard University. They should have extended him. Anyway, so that's enough of that. So trying to process my grief, what I have done is I've gone and collected what I have in my archives, which is like this stuff here. Um, uh, this is like I gathered it up and put it in this folder, and so that's not all of them. I took a couple of them out. So these are correspondence, and so I'm going through the correspondence, digitalizing it so that I can share it with the archivist at Washington University, where his archives are being held. And I guess I'll leave it with this. This is a letter that I wrote to Gar, September 26th, 1981. We were already now separated because I was in University of Illinois finishing up my PhD, and he was in Boston. The main thing to keep in mind is that suffering on all levels is increasing, and political repression on all levels is increasing, and this is happening across the board in the world today. I think it is also very important to keep in mind that although the empire might teeter on for decades more, it could also collapse before next weekend. Well, that's it for this week. I will see you again next week. Appreciate all of you for attending to my videos. I make no pretense for trying to entertain anybody. And I have no real understanding why anyone would want to watch an old man um, um, ramble on about anything. I appreciate your doing that, and I will see you next week.